The world as I knew it had always seemed simple, until one fateful evening when everything I understood about love, family, and desire began to shatter. As I stood in the middle of the dimly lit room, my heart racing, I felt a storm brewing, inside me and all around me. The voices in my head were louder than ever, torn between the warmth of a mother's embrace and the electrifying pull of a forbidden connection with my classmate. It's strange, isn't it? How life can throw you into the depths of emotion you never thought possible. What do you do when the lines blur, when the very people you hold most dear are the ones who pull you deeper into the darkness? Thank you to all my listeners and viewers for your unwavering support. Your likes, comments, and messages have fueled my courage to share this story. It's not easy, and I don't know where it will take me, but I hope it resonates with someone, anyone, who's ever faced a similar storm of emotions. The night was thick with silence, the kind of quiet that wraps itself around you like a cloak, suffocating but strangely comforting. I sat in my small, dimly lit room, looking at the clock on the wall as the seconds ticked away, each one heavier than the last. It was late, much later than I should have been up, but sleep wouldn't come. My mind was a whirlpool of thoughts I couldn't escape. There was something stirring inside me, something I hadn't quite understood until that evening, the evening everything changed. I'm not sure when it all began. Looking back, I can't pinpoint the exact moment I crossed the line between innocent admiration and something more. It wasn't his eyes, though they were dark and magnetic. It wasn't his smile, though it was charming enough to make me feel like I was the only person in the room. No, it wasn't any of those things. It was the way he made me feel like I was seen, truly seen, in ways I never had before. His name was Liam. He wasn't like the other guys in my class, not that I paid them much attention. I wasn't one for flings or casual dating. I had a boyfriend back home, Greg. He was sweet, reliable, the kind of guy you could bring home to meet your parents without a second thought. But with Liam, there was something different. He had a way of making the air between us feel electric, charged with possibility. It wasn't intentional, of course. He was just Liam. And I had no idea how deeply I would fall under his spell. It started with simple study sessions. That's how it always begins, right? A shared interest, a little help here and there, maybe a bit of friendly banter. But over time, something shifted. Our conversations turned deeper, more personal. He started sharing bits of his life, his struggles with his family, his dreams of traveling the world, his passions for things I had never considered before. And I, for the first time in a long while, felt understood. I wasn't just a student in a classroom to him, I was a person. But things didn't end there. They never do they? It was one of those quiet afternoons when my world started to crumble. I was sitting in the living room of our house, the space that had always been a sanctuary for me. My mom was in the kitchen, humming to herself as she prepared dinner, her favorite routine after a long day. I had just come from a meeting with Liam, nothing unusual, just a study group that ran a bit late. But when I walked in, something about the way my mom was talking to him felt off. They were standing too close, exchanging glances that were too intimate for mere acquaintances. It didn't click at first. It was only later, when I went to check on a forgotten jacket in the back of the car, that I found an old photograph wedged between the seats. I didn't recognize it at first, but my stomach dropped when I saw the familiar faces staring back at me, my mom, looking younger and more carefree, standing beside none other than Liam, smiling as though they shared a secret. I stood frozen, the photo in my hand trembling. The realization hit me like a tidal wave. My mom knew him. She knew him. And not just in passing. No, this was deeper, far more personal. I didn't want to believe it. I couldn't believe it. But there it was, the truth, hanging in the air between us. I pushed the door open slowly, not wanting to confront the storm that was about to descend. But it was too late. I was already in it. "Mom?" I called out, my voice shaking despite my best efforts to sound calm. She turned around, wiping her hands on a towel, her expression soft but unreadable. "Yes, sweetie?" I held up the photo, and her face instantly blanched. Her eyes flickered to the kitchen floor, then to me, and in that moment, I saw it, regret. "Mom, why didn't you tell me?" The words came out before I could stop them. She sighed, her shoulders slumping as if the weight of the world had settled upon them. "It wasn't the right time," she said quietly, almost too quietly. "I didn't want you to know." "But why?" I demanded, my voice now rising with a mix of hurt and anger. "Who is he to you, really?" She paused, taking a step toward me. "Liam was a part of my life many years ago. Before you were born. It was a brief, but intense, time. I thought we had moved past it, but seeing him again brought back some memories." "Memories?" I wanted to scream. The more I heard, the more confused I became. How could she have kept something like this from me? How could she have let me get so close to someone who had once been a part of her world? Before I could say anything more, the doorbell rang, interrupting the tension. We both froze, and then, as if fate had a cruel sense of humor, the door opened. There stood Liam, his face breaking into that familiar, irresistible smile. "Hey, is everything okay?" he asked, as though nothing had changed, as though the last few minutes hadn't just shattered everything I thought I knew about my own life. I looked at my mom, her face pale and her lips tight. She didn't say a word. But I could see it, the guilt in her eyes, the pain in his. In that moment, I realized that everything was about to change. I paused for a moment, taking a deep breath before speaking again. The days that followed that fateful evening were a blur of confusion, guilt, and hidden emotions. It felt as if everything I had once believed about my family, my relationships, and even myself, had shattered in an instant, leaving jagged fragments of truth I wasn't ready to piece together. The air in the house was thick with tension, and I found myself retreating into silence more than ever before. My mother and I exchanged little more than polite pleasantries, and when she spoke to me, there was an underlying strain in her voice. It was as though she couldn't look me in the eye without remembering the past she had tried so desperately to keep hidden. I couldn't decide if I was more angry at her for keeping this from me or at myself for having been so blind. Liam, of course, wasn't helping. He sent me texts, tried to pull me aside during class, always with that damn smile of his, as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. He wasn't just the guy I had been spending late nights with, the one who had made me feel seen. No, now he was something far more dangerous, someone who had crossed a line between my past and present, someone who had unknowingly, or perhaps knowingly, placed himself at the center of a family secret. Yet, despite everything, despite the betrayal, I found myself drawn to him. I couldn't explain it. Every time I saw him, my heart pounded like a drum in my chest. I wanted to hate him, to push him away, but there was this undeniable pull between us that I couldn't ignore. It was as if our souls had been entangled long before we ever met, and no matter how much I fought it, they couldn't be untangled now. I tried to distance myself. I avoided his texts and canceled study sessions. I told myself that it was the right thing to do, that I had to protect myself from whatever this was before it consumed me. But my resolve only lasted so long. It was the weekend when everything came to a head. I was sitting in the living room, flipping through a book, when my mother walked in, her face a mix of apprehension and determination. She closed the door behind her with a soft click, and I immediately knew something was about to happen. "We need to talk," she said, her voice low. I didn't answer at first, afraid that anything I said would come out in a rush of angry words. I had never seen my mother like this. She was usually so composed, so put together. But now, her shoulders were slumped, and her eyes avoided mine. "I know you're upset," she continued, taking a seat on the arm of the chair across from me. "And I can't undo what happened with Liam. I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. But I need you to understand that it wasn't what you think." I wanted to snap at her, to demand to know why she hadn't told me about Liam sooner, why she had let me get so close to him. But I didn't. I held my breath, waiting for her to explain herself, even though I wasn't sure I wanted to hear it. "When I was young," she began, "I made mistakes. I was reckless, and I hurt a lot of people, including myself. Liam and we were involved for a brief time. It wasn't serious, but it was real. And she stopped, her voice faltering for a moment, as if she had to summon the courage to keep going. I never wanted you to know about him because I was ashamed. I didn't want you to see me as someone flawed, someone who had made mistakes. I was silent, processing her words. So, you kept this from me all these years? You knew him, and you never thought to tell me? Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, but she didn't break. I thought I could protect you from the past. I thought I could shield you from the things I did. But I see now that I've failed you. And for that, I'm sorry. The weight of her apology hung in the air, but it didn't ease the storm brewing inside me. My thoughts were a chaotic whirlwind, anger, confusion, betrayal, but there was one emotion that stood out above all the rest: disappointment. Disappointment in her for keeping the secret and disappointment in myself for being so naive. Before I could speak, there was a knock at the door. My heart skipped. I knew exactly who it was. Liam. Of course, it had to be him. I stood up, my legs suddenly shaky. I can't do this, I muttered, more to myself than to my mom. But she grabbed my wrist before I could walk away. Listen to me, she said softly. You need to make a choice. This isn't just about Liam or me. It's about you. It's about understanding who you are, what you want, and what you're willing to forgive. I pulled my arm away from her grasp and walked to the door. When I opened it, there he was, Liam, standing in the doorway with that same calm expression, the one that had once made me feel safe. But now, it only made my blood run cold. Can we talk? He asked, his voice gentle, but there was something behind his eyes, something that told me this conversation wasn't going to be easy. I didn't know what to say. All I could think about was the tangled mess I was in. What was I supposed to do now? I don't know if I can, I whispered, my voice barely audible. Liam's gaze softened, and for a moment, I saw the boy I had once admired, the one who had made me feel seen. But that person felt so far away now. I'm sorry, for everything, he said, his words thick with regret. But I don't want to lose you. I took a deep breath, holding my emotions in check. You've already done that, I said, my voice firm, though my heart was breaking. I closed the door, leaving him standing outside, and turned to face my mother, who had been watching quietly from the living room. We stood there in silence for a long time, neither of us knowing what to say next. I stood at the crossroads of my emotions, caught between the past and the present, between the love I had for Liam and the family I had always trusted. The truth had come to light, but it wasn't as simple as just accepting it. Now, I had to make a choice. The following days felt like a blur, each one blending into the next in a haze of confusion and self-doubt. I felt like I was drowning, struggling to stay afloat in the sea of emotions that had consumed me. I had never expected life to feel so heavy, so suffocating. The weight of my decisions, my relationships, and the burden of the truth had shattered the illusions I had so carefully built around myself. I was no longer the person I had been. The girl who could look at the world with certainty, who could rely on her family and the life she'd known for years, was gone. All that remained was a fragile, raw version of myself, torn between conflicting emotions that seemed to have no end. I couldn't escape the quiet tension in the house. My mother avoided my gaze whenever she passed by, and when she did speak, her words were measured, careful, as if she was walking on eggshells. She had apologized, of course, repeatedly, but no apology could undo what had happened. It wasn't just about the secret she had kept from me. It was the betrayal that stung like 1,000 tiny cuts. I had trusted her, depended on her to guide me, and now that trust felt like it had been crushed beneath the weight of her hidden past. And then there was Liam. The longer I stayed away, the more I realized just how tangled I had become in his web. His messages had become more desperate, more pleading, as if he too had lost control of whatever had been between us. I had told myself that I needed space, that I needed to breathe, but the truth was, I didn't know how to let go of him. There were moments when I could almost feel his presence beside me, when I could almost hear his voice in my head. He was in every memory I had, every thought that crossed my mind. No matter how much I tried to shut him out, he was there, lurking in the background, like a shadow I couldn't outrun. It was late one night when I finally broke. I was sitting in my room, staring out the window at the moonlit sky, when my phone buzzed. It was a message from Liam. I had promised myself I wouldn't respond, but I couldn't resist. His words were simple, but they cut through me like a knife. I need to see you. Please. I can't keep doing this without you. I stared at the screen, my heart racing. Every part of me wanted to say no, wanted to walk away and pretend this never happened. But another part of me, one that I couldn't control, one that still longed for the connection we once shared, yearned to see him again. I didn't think. I just acted. I grabbed my jacket and slipped out of the house, my footsteps echoing in the quiet night. I told myself it was a mistake, that I would regret it, but I couldn't stop. My mind was a whirlwind, caught between guilt and desire, between love and betrayal. I needed closure, I told myself. I needed to see him face to face and figure out where we stood. But deep down, I knew that seeing him again would only drag me further into the mess I had already created. When I arrived at his apartment, the door opened almost immediately. There he was, standing in front of me, looking just as conflicted as I felt. His eyes were tired, dark circles under them, but his face softened when he saw me. For a moment, it felt like nothing had changed. He wasn't just Liam, my classmate. He was the person I had allowed myself to care for, the person who had taken up space in my heart without permission. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, his voice a low murmur. I wanted to say no. I wanted to tell him to leave me alone, to walk away and never look back. But instead, I nodded, too tired to fight it anymore. "I don't know. I don't know anything anymore," I whispered. We didn't speak after that. Instead, he took my hand, leading me inside, and for the first time since all of this had started, I let myself fall into his arms, letting the weight of everything slide away, if only for a moment. I told myself it was a mistake. I told myself I was just seeking comfort, just looking for something familiar in the midst of the chaos. But as I held him, I realized that I wasn't just seeking comfort, I was searching for a way out. A way to escape the guilt that gnawed at my insides, a way to escape the suffocating reality of what I had done. That night, the world felt far away. For a brief moment, I forgot about the repercussions, the lies, and the secrets. But as dawn broke, the reality of what had happened set in. I had crossed a line, one I couldn't uncross. And as much as I wanted to deny it, I knew that seeing Liam again had changed everything. It hadn't fixed anything, it had only made it worse. I returned home before my mother woke up, my heart heavy with the weight of the choices I had made. I knew I had to face her, but I wasn't ready. Not yet. I couldn't bring myself to tell her what had happened, to admit that I had betrayed her trust in a way that was even worse than she had done to me. The silence between us that day was unbearable. She tried to speak to me, but the words always faltered. She asked if I was okay, if I had been thinking things through. But all I could do was nod, offering her a hollow smile that I knew wouldn't fool either of us. That evening, after dinner, I sat down with her, the guilt pressing down on me like a heavy weight. "Mom," I began, my voice shaking, "I need to talk to you." She looked at me, her expression unreadable. She knew something had changed. "What is it, sweetie?" I swallowed hard, the words sticking in my throat. I didn't want to tell her what I had done. I didn't want to face the consequences of my actions. But I had no choice. I had to come clean. I saw Liam. We spent the night together. Her face went pale, and I saw her flinch as if she had been struck. But she didn't say anything at first. She simply looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of hurt and disappointment. "I don't know what I was thinking," I whispered, my voice breaking. "I didn't know how to stop myself. I don't know if I even want to stop." She nodded slowly, tears welling up in her eyes. I don't know what to say, she said quietly. I never wanted this for you. For either of us. We sat in silence for a long time, neither of us knowing where to go from here. But the truth was out now, and nothing would ever be the same again. I sat there, the weight of my actions crashing down on me, and I realized with startling clarity that there was no easy way out of this. I had crossed a line, and now, I would have to live with the consequences. My relationships with both Liam and my mother were forever altered, and there was no going back. Thank you all for listening and watching my story. It was difficult to share, but it feels like a necessary step in telling this story. If you've ever found yourself caught between love, guilt, and the weight of your own choices, I hope you can relate. Please like, comment, and share. Your support gives me the strength to continue this journey.